Hello and welcome to this presentation on search engine optimization, why it matters and how to do it. My name is Paul Gillen. I am the author of several books about social media, and search is certainly an interest of mine, as an interest of anybody who works in social media channels these days. Search engine optimization is a complex and a highly specialized discipline. It can't be covered in just a 1-hour presentation, but at least I can go over some of the basics, and I'll give you some tricks that nearly anyone with a website presence can use to get more search visibility. Why should you optimize for search? Well, numbers like these provide some pretty compelling evidence. The volume of search activity is growing steadily, and the quality of search engines is improving. About 80% of B2B buyers start the buying process with a search, and I think it's safe to say that nearly every buying decision has search embedded in it at some point. Two numbers that are really interesting in this chart. One is that the average number of words in a Google search is increasing. This indicates that people are getting more savvy about using search engines and specifying longer queries. And that means that your search strategy needs to be focused more than ever on the so-called long tail of highly specific keywords. We'll get into that a little bit more later. Another amazing statistic that comes from Google is that 20% of all Google searches have never been done before. And that means that try as you might to anticipate the ways in which people will find you or your company, they're always going to come up with something new. One of the often overlooked values of having good search visibility is public relations. It's safe to say that every journalist uses search routinely these days, but increasingly they rely upon information on company websites, expertise from bloggers, and even Wikipedia profiles for background information. That's another strong endorsement of the value of blogging, by the way. Not only do blogs perform well in search, but they are perceived to have high credibility because they're written by humans. If you have a blog on your website, it's going to help your search results. If you don't have a Wikipedia entry, by the way, consider starting one. Be aware that promotional language is strictly forbidden in Wikipedia, and that nearly all facts must be attributed to independent sources. So make sure whoever creates your Wikipedia entry does so from a position of absolute impartiality. Now, links from Wikipedia won't actually help your search results, but Wikipedia is very often the #1 result for companies and brands and practically anything you type into Google. So having a Wikipedia presence is important simply from a visibility perspective. Here are a few interesting facts about search engines. Did you know, for example, that the top 25 Google results for personal computer include only one PC maker? What this demonstrates is that valuable advice is considered more important than product information by the top search engines. Note that the first 5 responses to the search query in the screenshot on this page all relate to definitions and history of the personal computer. So if you want to maximize search engine visibility, publish useful stuff. That's what search engines prefer. Did you know that links from .edu, .mil, and .gov sites significantly improve your search performance? The reason is that those domains are controlled by the U.S. Department of State, and they can't be purchased on the public market. So search engines assume that domains ending in those suffixes are high quality because they have that government stamp of legitimacy. Did you know that the #1 result for click here is Adobe Reader? I'll explain later why click here is such a useless phrase to use in a link. Suffice to say that Adobe doesn't get much benefit from owning that search term, although it is notable for that reason. The more often you update your website, the more often Google visits it. That's part of the big Google Panda update in 2011 that we'll talk about in a moment. Panda also introduced performance into Google's criteria. In other words, the faster your site loads, the better it is for your search results. That's why frequently updated websites tend to do better in Google and Bing search results. And by the way, when I speak about Google in this presentation, I'm referring also to other search engines. Google has about 75% of the market in the U.S., but there are other search engines such as Bing and Yahoo that are important, but they all operate pretty much the same way. The Panda proposition. Rolled out in 2011, Panda is a major revision of the Google algorithm that targets low-quality content, excessive advertising, branding, and link farming. Those are all bad things that Google wanted to get rid of. Factors it's now taking into account include how fast your site loads, the aesthetic appeal of your site, the quality of the content, shares on social networks, interactivity, and engagement potential. I won't go into Panda in detail, but it's important to understand that as an indicator of Google's direction, this is very much where Google wants to go. Panda was a major revision of the search algorithm. It's been updated several times since, and one of its primary purposes was to combat the growth of so-called content farms. These are websites that produce large amounts of keyword-stuffed copy that isn't particularly useful, but that's intended to overwhelm search engines and elevate search results. So Panda evaluates a website for things like aesthetic appeal and quality content, although how it determines quality content is a Google secret. It's safe to say the content that is shared and commented on now fares better in Google than content that isn't. Google also began factoring, with Panda, server performance into search results, and that's on the theory that sites that load quickly provide a better user experience. And that's a pretty powerful argument against loading up your website with lots of images, videos, multimedia, and extraneous detail that doesn't matter to search engines. Here's what a Panda was intended to combat. There are millions of spam sites just like these out there. They scrape content from elsewhere on the web and they toss it into a page, just like ingredients in a Cuisinart. The text often makes no sense, but certain keywords are repeated at optimal intervals for the purpose of attracting search engine attention. Now, these sites are useless. They're a waste of space, and they are usually filled with plagiarized material. Google is getting better and better at ignoring this kind of stuff, but it's a game of leapfrog between the search engines and the spammers. The spammers are constantly getting better at trying to game the search battle, and the search engines are constantly getting better at trying to defeat them. There's no sign that that game of leapfrog is going to end anytime soon. So a good search strategy begins with keyword selection. So let's start there. The most important strategy in keyword selection is to choose the words that are just right for your situation. That means don't choose keywords that are too hot, which means that they have multiple meanings or are in widespread use. Security is an example of that. You should also avoid keywords that are so specific that people would never look for them. Now, if I had to err on one extreme or the other, I'd rather go for colder keywords, because while they may generate a small number of clicks, they can also attract a very high quality of user. Use the language the searcher uses. This may be distasteful in some cases because the terms your marketing organization likes to use aren't necessarily the ones that the average buyer uses. For example, a computer maker may like to call its products notebooks, but there are 7 times as many searches for laptop as for notebook. So don't let pride get in the way of your search strategy. You have to think like the searcher does. Similarly, you may choose to call your employees associates or cast members, but that's not how people search for employment. They look for jobs, they look for employees. So when it comes to making yourself visible in search, you want to use the terms that people are going to find you with. Similarly, take into account regional differences. For example, Americans search for crockpot, but Canadians search for slow cooker. If you use the term ad in the UK to refer to a television commercial, you'll get blank stares. Over there, they're called adverts. So if you're targeting a page toward a UK audience, you want to use that local language. Also consider context. A good example of this is that someone looking for an inn probably wants a different experience than someone looking for a hotel. The first person is more likely to be a vacationer, while the latter person is probably a business traveler. So think of the terms you use on your site, whether you are trying to reach an inexperienced novice user, perhaps a leisure or casual user, as opposed to someone who is trying to get business done. And there's nothing wrong with having different pages on your site, or even different sites entirely, to target different geographies or different types of users. I mentioned the long tail earlier, and that's a term that was coined by Chris Anderson in his book of the same name, The Long Tail. It refers to the fact that in many consumer markets, the top handful of brands sell as much as all the other competitors in the market combined. The example that Anderson used is on Amazon. The top 100 books on Amazon sell about as many copies as the other couple of million books on Amazon that are also available. The idea is that we're pretty good at optimizing for that top 100, but the real opportunity is in optimizing for the other 2 million. That's what the long tail is. You can have a pretty good business because the buyers who seek niche products are more likely to pay a premium for them. So the same works in search. High competition terms like cloud computing, for example, are nearly impossible to own. It'd be very expensive to make the top 10 results in Google with cloud computing. Probably impossible. However, subsets of that keyword may be much easier to capture. Let's look at an example in the security world. You're never going to be number one on Google search results for security. However, as you move down the long tail to physical security and physical security retail, your chances improve because there's less competition for those keywords. If your company provides on-premise security services like guards for retail companies, why would you want to optimize for security? You're not actually going to get good customers or good clicks from that. You want to go where the buyers are. So you could go an even level lower and optimize on something like physical security retail Minneapolis if your business was regional. And there's a very good chance you could own that term because there's probably not a lot of search-savvy competition that's trying to optimize for physical security in retail stores in Minneapolis. Here are some tools you can use to research keywords, and we'll go into a couple of these in more detail. The Google AdWords Keyword Tool is a wealth of intelligence on what people are searching for. Google Trends works at a higher level than that. It isn't as helpful in selecting keywords, but it will show you what's growing and what's slowing, and that can actually even help you with your business strategy. It's a good idea to keep an eye on the trends in your market in Google Trends, so that you see if interest is picking up or waning in different areas. Google Autocomplete is a fairly recent innovation. You can see an example here at the right. You've seen it, I'm sure, when you begin to type a search query into Google, a box will drop down that will attempt to complete your search query for you. It can be good for entertainment value, as you can see in this example, but it's also actually helpful in showing you how people complete some of the most popular search queries. You have to turn this feature on in Google, by the way. It isn't enabled by default. It's simply another tool that you can use. The remaining three services on this list are all helpful in keyword selection. These are all services that carry a fee, but they do give you some modest service for free, and even the free services can be useful in helping you make at least some top-level decisions. Let's look at Google AdWords Keyword Tool in a little more depth. You can find it by searching Google for AdWords Keyword Tool. When you get there, you want to log into your Google account. It shows you the relative popularity of keywords that you enter in terms of global monthly searches. It also shows you the popularity of related keywords. Now, the great value of the keyword tool is for discovery, and those related keywords are important. The tool can point you toward keyword combinations that you perhaps hadn't considered, but which generate a decent amount of search activity. The keyword tool will also tell you what it will cost you to purchase keywords for search engine marketing. That's the paid links that show up at the top of Google search results and also on the right-hand side. That's one way to calculate the ROI of your search engine optimization efforts. For example, if you get 1,000 visitors through organic search, through search optimization, for a keyword that costs $2 per click, that's $2,000 in advertising equivalency. One way to figure out the value of what you're getting for organic search. I should note that the global monthly searches figure that you see in that middle column is relative, and that's not absolute. Google never discloses actual search volumes. These numbers are intended to be used only in comparison to one another and will show you relative to each other what the popularity of that search term is. Google Trends operates at a higher level. It shows you keyword activity over time. You can specify the time period. This can be useful in detecting whether the keyword combinations you're interested in are growing or declining in popularity. And it's also a great way of detecting shifts in markets. This chart, for example, shows one of the more dramatic examples of changes in consumer attitudes as expressed by the search terms that people are querying about. As smartphones have evolved to include more sophisticated cameras, the volume of queries for digital camera has declined. So if your primary business is making or selling digital cameras, a look at this trend on Google Trends might set off a warning bell that you should look into some new markets. It's also interesting to look at Google Trends for its geographic and its time-based results. You'll notice here, for example, that there's a spike in searches for digital camera at about the end of each year. Not surprisingly, Christmas is a time when people are looking to buy digital cameras. So the seasonality is also interesting to look at. Google Trends does show geographic breakdowns by country, so you can see the relative popularity of terms in different regions of the world. And that's important because some markets that may be mature in the US and Europe, for example, may be still evolving in India or in Southeast Asia. So keep an eye also, on, if you're an international business, on where the trends are headed in the different geographies. Google Suggest, or is the recommendation tool that I showed you earlier, is actually called Google Autocomplete. It used to be called Google Suggest. It shows you recent and popular search terms for a query as you type it. There's nothing significant or nothing scientific about this tool, but it may give you some ideas for combinations of keywords that you hadn't considered. It's free. It's part of the core Google service, and it has a very large database to draw from. The cons, it does have a limited number of keywords. It's not necessarily, we don't know how Google selects these words, these queries to complete for you, so it doesn't necessarily represent the most popular queries, but it represents really a combination of terms that are getting quite a bit of activity. Again, it's something that is useful for considering new keyword combinations, not necessarily a scientific measure, though. Finally, Google has a useful feature called related searches. That's sort of a miniature version of the keyword tool. And you'll see this when you perform a Google search. It's usually at the bottom of the page. It shows you other popular search terms that are related to the one you specified. And again, it might give you some ideas for other search terms that you want to investigate. So let's now turn to the fundamentals of search, and that which you can control and that which you can't. HubSpot is an online maker of software and services for small businesses primarily. It helps companies to optimize their online visibility. And they publish a lot of excellent advice for free. You can go to HubSpot.com and register there, and you'll get a steady stream of information, ebooks, white papers, webinars, and such that help you become a better online marketer. And for the most part, this content is not intended to promote HubSpot. It's intended to help you get better at online marketing. So there are several statistics and bits of advice in this presentation that come from that HubSpot content. So according to HubSpot, about 25% of search performance relates to elements that are visible on the page that you can see. One of the most important factors in this is the URL, or the domain name. That's the root level name of your website. For example, DunkinDonuts.com. If your domain name includes keywords that are important to you, it actually works to your benefit to have them in the domain name. Dunkin' Donuts sells donuts, so it works to their benefit that the word donuts appears in the domain. Now, some companies like to promote new initiatives by creating websites around domains that use words that are important to their product or business. For example, data center or storage. And that works to their benefit in search visibility. That's not an all-or-nothing proposition, by the way. If you have a separate website, a separate domain set up for a company or a product, then that search engine benefit does not accrue to the core or the root domain. So you need to consider that whether you want to create a subdomain, entirely new domain, or pages within your root domain, and trade off that somewhat improved search visibility for the overall search visibility that your site gets. The second most important factor in on-page search results is the page title. And those are the words that appear at the top of the page tab in your browser. Most people don't even look at them very often, but they're very important to search engines. They pay a lot of attention to them. You want to be sure that they contain your most critical keywords, and we'll show you examples of that, both good and bad, coming up. As you move down the importance stack, the H1, H2, and H3 tags denote different headline sizes, and H1 is the largest. Now, you don't see these tags, but when you see a set of words on a page that are larger than other words, that is probably a headline tag. And depending on whether it's H1, H2, or H3, that will affect the size, and Google affords different importance to those different tags. Keywords in headlines get a little more attention from search engines than keywords in text. Below that are the keywords in the text itself, but even then, not all keywords are created the same. For example, keywords that are in bold text or that have hyperlinks get a little extra attention from search engines. There's also the factor of repetition. Repetition of certain keywords on the page up to a point is considered good. over that point is considered spam. What is that cutoff number? Well, we don't know, and in fact it changes all the time, but a lot of search engine optimization, SEO experts, say that about 5 to 7 repetitions of a keyword on a page is about optimal. 25% of your search visibility is invisible to the average viewer, but it's visible to the search engine. One critical element is the page description, and that's the 160 characters that describe your page to search engines. The only time you see these descriptions actually is in search results. They're invisible on the page, but the search engines look at them closely because they say what the page is about. They're embedded in the HTML code that search engines analyze. So you want to be sure your descriptions use the right keywords and tell your stories within 160 characters. Meta keywords used to be more important than they are now, and some people actually say they're not at all important anymore. These are terms that describe your site, but in the form of keyword combinations, and they're also embedded in the HTML code of the page. I wouldn't worry too much about meta tags anymore, since the search engines do seem to be de-emphasizing them. They can actually have the unintended effect of tipping off your competition to the keywords that you're using. So don't pay too much attention to meta keywords right now. You may even want to leave that field blank in your HTML. Alt tags are text descriptions that are applied to images and menu items, and they're another way of telling the search engine what the page is about. Often you'll see alt tags applied to images. You know, if you hover your pointer over an image, you'll see a little box pop up. That's because search engines can't do anything with images. They can't interpret images. So an image is basically just a big blank space to them. An alt tag is a little bit of text that you can add to an image that tells the search engine what the image is about. So it doesn't hurt to include them as a way of adding a little extra keyword juice to the page. The fact is that search engines are basically dumb and blind. They don't see your pretty pictures, your movies, or your flash animation. What they do see is text, and they're very good at munging through a lot of text and figuring out what it all means. The easier you can make it for search engines to figure out what your page is about, the more they'll like you, and we'll talk about a few ways you can do that. If you search on some popular keywords in your industry and look at the commercial pages that come up, you'll see some consistent attributes. These are the sites that perform very well on search, and generally you'll see that they all have well-written page titles, they have clear and unambiguous headlines, frequent repetition of certain keywords up to a point, and very little flash animation or multimedia. And that's because anything that slows down the page from loading hurts search performance these days, and that's why you're seeing a lot of sites actually do away with flash animation, because it slows down performance. What works best is flat HTML pages with simple messages at the top in large text and relatively few words on the page. So let's take a look at one company that does this very well. If I enter inventory management software into Google, the number one result I get is a company called Inflow. So I say, by the way, if I enter the query term into Google, because I'm emphasizing the I there, because Google returns different search results for each person now, depending on their past behavior and other things that Google knows about you. Search is becoming very personalized, so it's difficult to generalize about what rises to the top. But in most cases, for an area such as this, where I don't do a lot of searching, my search results will be pretty representative of most people's. And in this case, the number one search result is a company called Inflow. So let's start by looking at the search result. We look at Inflow's page title and description, and we can see that this company is eager to drive home the message that it's all about inventory management software. In fact, the word inventory appears no less than 5 times in the page title and description. That isn't an accident. Inflow believes that 5 repetitions is about right to drive home this message to the search engine without stepping over that line into spamming. Judging by their search performance, that seems to be a pretty good figure. When we visit the Inflow site, we see some other nice ways the company optimizes for search. Notice that the domain name is inflowinventory.com rather than inflow.com. Now, it so happens that inflow.com probably wasn't available. It's actually owned by SunGard Data Systems. So that probably wasn't an option the company had, but the alternative that they use, Inflow Inventory, does have an advantage in that it contains an important search keyword, which is inventory. If Inflow had its choice, it would probably prefer to use its brand as its domain, but the Inflow inventory is not a bad second choice. We see that the term inventory is repeated twice in every page title. You see that red circle at the top. When we look into the HTML code, we see that every page has a well-written summary of its contents that again repeats the term inventory several times. And that's for Google's benefit, that when a search result returns that page, there's a good, concise 160-character description of that page included in the results. There can be very little doubt to the search engine that this company is in the inventory software business. The site description and the meta tags reinforce this continually. But there's more. Inflow also sweats the details. So if you hover your pointer over the menus on its site, an alt tag pops up. A little box pops up that again repeats the word inventory software. This is an alt tag that I mentioned earlier. That's a nice detail. Social sharing buttons also work to enhance legitimacy. No one knows for sure what the impact of these sharing widgets is on search performance, but it's becoming pretty clear that inbound links from social channels like Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn are beneficial to search results. One of the advantages of including these widgets on your site is that it makes it easy for people to endorse the site through a tweet or a link on Facebook. The Facebook counter is also an important endorsement for the site. You can see that's a little icon that says like 522. It displays to the world how many people have voted for the site by liking it on Facebook. If you have a branded presence in a social channel, I recommend that you have these buttons on your website. The bigger that like number, the more people have seen your site and have registered some sort of an endorsement for it through their like button. Finally, we see at the right a valuable inbound link from PC Magazine, in which the words inventory software are part of the descriptive text, also called the anchor text. I'll talk in a moment about why that's important. But all in all, Inflow does a nice job of covering all the major details of search optimization. Here's what you don't want on your site. And a lot of sites are very poorly search optimized. This is particularly true, I think, for B2B companies, where search perhaps is not considered to be an important driver of traffic. So here's some common mistakes you see that represent missed opportunities. One of the worst is the dreaded home page title. This is the default title that tools like Microsoft Front Page use. And if you don't change it, it just goes live on the web. Now, Google has no idea what to do with a page called Home, other than to add it to the millions of other pages in its index that are labeled the same way. This is a major oversight in search engine optimization, to not label your pages appropriately. Moving on, we see another common mistake, which is a garbled page title. And this happens when a page is put on the internet with no title at all, and it's up to the search engine to figure one out. Now, search engines are not very good at this, which is why you see a lot of results like this one that's basically gibberish. The same thing happens with PDF documents. Only in that case, the search engine usually displays the title of the document as the title of the search result. Since most people give documents arcane names that only make sense to them or a few of their colleagues, it's generally bad practice to put these documents live on the web. And PDF is a particularly common offender because many companies publish documents to the web by converting them from Word into PDF format and then just putting them up on the server. If they don't give the document a descriptive name, you get results that look like this one. The same goes for document descriptions. Search engines actually handle PDFs pretty well. They can read them and they can index them just like HTML pages. But the descriptive information that they need, that meta description, is contained within discrete fields within a PDF document that are accessible from the file menu. If you don't fill out those fields, the search engines have to figure out again from the text what the document is about. And we know they don't do that very well. In my experience, PDF documents that are published online rarely have any descriptive information filled in at all. And that's a missed opportunity, particularly because so many companies publish their press releases as PDF documents and then neglect this very simple detail. The same goes for audio files, which are commonly used for podcasts, investor briefings, interviews, and the like. Audio files have a set of descriptive fields called ID3 tags that tell search engines what the audio is about. If you don't fill them out, the search engine has nothing to work with. And in my experience, these fields are almost never filled out, which means that these audio files are in effect useless from a search perspective. So let's get on with tips for optimizing your own site for search. We've covered the basics at this point, and now I'd like to go into some specific tactics that you can employ. Get the basics right, and we'll use an example from HubSpot here because HubSpot does so many things well. Make sure every file on every page covers the basics. Each entry or permalink in the blog should have a clear headline that says exactly what the post is about. This is not a place for wordsmithing or playing games with words. You want to tell the search engine exactly what is in that file, and you want to use the keywords that are important to you in that description, the headline. Each author name links to a bio page with information about that author and links to other posts that they've created. This is increasingly important because Google is now personalizing search results by the name of the author. So if the person conducting the search has a relationship with that author or has indicated in the past that they know that author, that search result will actually get more prominence in Google search in Google pages. Bio information now matters more than ever. Notice that comments are enabled, and that permits readers to respond to the post. This is a blog post, but that can be comments can be enabled for really any type of content. This is courteous, of course. It's really part of the way the social web works, but it's also search friendly. As I noted earlier, the Panda update of Google is now taking things like comment activity into account in assigning search relevance. Looking at the left side of this page, you see social sharing links, which provide ways for people to easily share the content. Now, we don't know exactly how search engines evaluate shared links and in their search performance, but we do know that sharing is becoming more important. And when you put the links on the page, you make it simple for people to share that link, and that increases the likelihood that it will be seen by search engines through links from Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and the like, and that it will help improve your search visibility. The easier you can make it for search engines to find out who's linking to you, the better, and that's why these widgets are useful. Finally, the subheads are keyword focused as well. In this case, the word viral is important to this article, and so you'll see it repeated several times on the page, and you'll also see it in the headline and in subheads. These are just some of the basics of putting content on the web in a way that makes it easy for search engines to understand it and to index it. How does Google see your site? Well, there's actually a way that you can see your site the same way that Google does, and I'll show this to you. Search for your company name on Google, and in the search results, you'll see a link at the top that says Cached. Open that page, and you'll see a link on the top that says Text-Only Version. You see it there at the upper right. If you click on that link, the next page you'll see is a naked, boring river of text that's ugly to you and me to look at, but to search engines, it's a sight for sore eyes. This is what Google sees when it visits your website. Actually, you have to look one level deeper than this at the HTML itself to speak Google's language, but this is good enough for our purposes. So you're now looking at your site the way a search engine sees it, stripped of all of its graphics and all of its accoutrements. Ask yourself if this is the best possible description of what you do. If this uses the keywords that you want search engines to see, the keywords that matter to your customers. If it isn't, then you know exactly where you need to make changes. But when you strip your website bare of all of the gingerbread, this is a good, simple way to look at it from the way a search engine does. Another often overlooked area of search engine optimization is URL construction. And I mentioned that earlier that domain names, how important they are to search engine visibility. This is really part of that domain name equation. A URL is an extension of a domain name that refers to an individual page or an individual item of content on the page. These are some tips from my friends at McDougall Interactive, which is a search engine optimization firm based in eastern Massachusetts. Can you guess what the content of the page will be by looking at the URL? That's a good question. It's usually optimal to have your company name as the root domain for the website, but that doesn't mean you can't have subsites that use keywords in the subdomain. For example, Dunkin' Donuts might choose to have a page devoted to muffins. They could create a site called Dunkin' Muffins. It's one way to do it. But they could also use Dunkin' Donuts / muffins, or by using that root domain with a subdomain that refers to a keyword that's important to them. So that is one approach to getting your keywords into your domain name, into that very important URL, by using subdomains that include those keywords. Incidentally, I mentioned Inflow Software earlier. Inflow is owned by a company called Archon Systems. Now, no one knows what an Archon is, so the company was smart to set up its inventory software business under a separate domain, Inflow Inventory. Use keywords, but don't go overboard. And we're talking about in the URLs. Now, I can't tell you what overboard is because search engines don't go into much detail on that, but use your best judgment. This is a rather extreme example you see here. Widgets again, widgets, widgets. If the repetition is overbearing, or if it looks contrived, if it looks like you're trying to game the system, then you should probably tone it down a little. Use static URLs rather than dynamic ones if possible. Now, many content management systems default to dynamic URLs because basically they're shorter and it's easier for the computer to organize them. That doesn't make them easier for search engines to understand, though. They're not doing you any favors in search. In this case, this is item 3 here, why you should own bunnies is a much better URL than the one that the content management system assigned, which was blog ID 123. So you want to be sure that whatever content management system you use has these verbose verbose URLs turned on and is not using dynamic URLs. It's important because if you use WordPress, which is far and away the primary platform for blogging and for really all websites these days, the default setting is to use dynamic URLs. You need to go into WordPress settings and switch to use the verbose URLs. In the same vein, use real words instead of SKU numbers and inventory codes in your page names. Google doesn't know what to do with an inventory code, product 342, but it does know what Bread Store Loaves sourdough is. And interestingly, it's considered better to use hyphens to separate words rather than underscores because search engines interpret them differently. Probably not a big deal, but it's one of those little details that's worth knowing about. So now let's talk about the other part, the mysterious part of search engine optimization, and that is links. Inbound links are the secret sauce of modern search engines, and the rules change all the time. I mentioned at the top that you can control about half of your search visibility, but this is the other half. Their impact on search results is important, and it's also mysterious, and there are a lot of SEO consultants out there who make their livings trying to read the tea leaves of Google and understand how it interprets inbound links. Google's great innovation was its use of inbound links, and those are links from other websites, and it uses them as a validation mechanism. The founders of Google believed that inbound links from high-quality sources conferred a sort of validation that the content is useful. Basically, when people link to you, they vote for you. Believe it or not, prior to Google, no one had built a product, a search product, that did this. The first 6 years of the commercial web, all search engines, Hotbot and AltaVista and Lycos and the like, pretty much relied on reading the pages in order to figure out how to present those pages in search results. Google was the great innovation here, and all search engines now work this way. Google is very secretive about how its weighting mechanism works for evaluating inbound links, but we know that the more links you have from high-quality websites, the better it is for your search visibility. We also know that high-quality websites are to Google those that themselves have a lot of high-quality inbound links. So this is sort of the great recursive puzzle of the searchable internet. Sites are assigned validity and authority based upon the number of high-quality inbound links from other sites, and those sites' validity and authority is also evaluated the same way. That's why I say it's sort of the great circle of search. You can get a taste of the volume of inbound links that are coming into your site by using the link command in Google, as we demonstrate here. This will give you an assortment of sites that Google knows link to you, and it's often interesting simply to look through the list of results and see who is linking to you. Now, the result of this query is not exhaustive or even very accurate, and there's a myth that this link code, this link command, will get you a complete list of all sites that Google knows links to you. That's not the case. If you run the same link command on different days, you may get two different results, and Google has never claimed that it's anything more than a sampling. But it will give you an idea of who's linking to you. By the way, sites like Alexa and Compete, as well as HubSpot's website grader line of products, can give you also a good indication of how many sites are linking to you. I don't think anybody has the absolute answer to this question except for Google itself, but you can work by triangulation. If you use multiple tools to evaluate the number and the quality of inbound links that you're getting, you can begin to triangulate a pretty good idea of who's linking to you. I want to talk just briefly about anchor text, and this is something that a lot of people don't understand very well. Link quality isn't just a matter of the link source. The term that the linking site uses is also important, and the word for this is anchor text. Now, anchor text is the blue underlined text that makes up a hyperlink, and those words really matter. Remember I mentioned earlier that Adobe Acrobat is the #1 result for the term click here. Now, I can assure you that Adobe would much rather that people use terms like best portable document format or awesome publishing tool when they link to Acrobat, but that isn't the case. They usually just use click here. Now, click here doesn't do you much good, and if we look at the inflow example, for example, you would much rather that people link to you with a term like small business inventory management than a term like click here. Search engines can learn something when they see small business inventory management. It tells them something about the page it's being linked to. But when search engines see click here, they toss that link onto the big pile of useless stuff right next to all those pages that say home at the top. Actually, even the click here link has value because it is a link from an outside source, so we don't want to discard the importance of that inbound link. But you're not getting the full value of the text if it isn't descriptive. So when you link to pages on your own site, when you link from other sites that you control, or when you request links from third parties to your page, ask them to use a certain set of keywords. The more often those keywords turn up in anchor text from other sites, the better Google can understand your site and the better it will impact your search results. Here are just a few tactics that you can use to generate inbound links. Link internally from other websites that you control, for example from a blog or from employee-specific blogs. As long as the link is a different domain than your destination site, than your target site, the search engines will treat it as a unique inbound link, and that's good. Link to other websites. This works particularly well when you link to bloggers, because bloggers see those inbound links coming in, and they're more likely to link back to you as a result. Use tags and categories to make it easy for people to find you on search. Tagging content is a core function of most content management systems, and while tags are not necessarily visible to the visitor, they are visible to the search engine, and tags get a certain priority in search results because they are a human declared form of description of metadata about that page. So use them whenever you can. A category is just like a tag, only it's generally used for internal organization rather than to external description, but it has the same function as far as search engines are concerned. Register with feed aggregators, for example, Alltop and Yahoo. They don't necessarily help your search results, but they do make it easier for others to find you. The more likely it is that others find you, the more likely it is that they link to you, and that's good for your search results. Ask people you know to link to you, and offer them a link in return. And I should make a distinction here between asking people you know and sending out blanket email messages or carpet bombing lists to people you don't know. That's spamming, and it's not a good idea. But there's nothing wrong with requesting a link from someone who is a colleague or an acquaintance of yours and also offering them a link in return. You both help each other out. Let people know when you link to them. Send them an email message. Tell them that a post just went up with a link to their site. They just might return the favor. File a sitemap with Google. This is a somewhat technical process involving an XML file, but if you use a popular blogging platform like WordPress, there are plugins that do it for you automatically. Any webmaster who knows anything about administering a website probably knows how to create a sitemap, or can do that in a matter of a few minutes by simply searching around. Bookmark your pages on popular bookmarking services like Delicious or Digo or Pinterest. These links don't necessarily help your search performance, but they do give you added visibility. Use Twitter to promote your content to others. There is evidence that tweets do positively affect search rankings. Again, while the search engines will not be definitive on this, there have been independent studies that have showed that pages that have up to 50 tweets linking to them do perform better in search results. There's a gap then, there's sort of a plateau is realized, and then when you get over 500 tweets, again you see a positive benefit on search results. Make sure you post any new content to your branded Google Plus account. Now, Google Plus is Google's social network, and it's often perceived as being a competitor to Facebook, but Google has never called it that. Google has positioned Google Plus as an integration point for all of its online properties. One thing that it has been definitive about is that a presence on Google Plus is good for your search rankings. So you need to be on Google Plus if you want to help improve your search performance. Don't miss that opportunity. It's pretty simple. I want to add a comment here, by the way, about a term you might hear called nofollow. That's a command that any website operator can use to instruct search engines not to follow a link or not to index a link. Nofollow is used by many sites that permit users to post their own links, such as bookmarking services. For example, Delicious, which is the oldest and I think still the most popular bookmarking service, is a nofollow site. Any link that you post there will not be indexed by the search engines. The reason they do this is to prevent spammers from flooding the service with links for the sole purpose of improving search performance. Wikipedia actually is one example of a prominent site that uses the nofollow attribute for this purpose. Wikipedia used to permit search engines to follow its links, but it was being overrun by spammers putting up bad links. So it implemented nofollow, and now those links on Wikipedia basically do you no good. WordPress blogs are configured by default to nofollow any links that are posted as comments. That's specifically to comments, and that's intended to prevent comment spam. If you own a blog, I'm sure you've seen this. People will post comments that have nothing to do with what you've written on your blog, but include links, and they're attempting to game the search engines into indexing their links. It's kind of stupid to do this because WordPress automatically institutes nofollow, and most WordPress blogs do not follow links in comments, but people do it anyway. Website operators do have the option of turning nofollow on or off, and I don't know of any master list of sites that use it. There are, however, browser plugins that you can get for Firefox and Chrome that will tell you if the links on the page are enabled with the nofollow attribute, and that can be useful in deciding whether it's worth posting a link there. By the way, the fact that a site has nofollow in effect doesn't mean you shouldn't post a link there. It's always good to have your content linked to in places where other people can find it and potentially can link to it from their own branded sites. But you won't see any search benefit from a nofollow link. So let's close out with just a few remarks about the future of search, because this is a constantly shifting landscape. All search engines are seeking the Holy Grail, which is to provide the most useful content and interpret what the searcher wants from just a few words expressed in a query box. Essentially, they want to get inside the mind of the searcher. The way they do this is evolving as the internet becomes more social. Now, in the early days of search, engines pretty much work with content on the web page, and that didn't work very well because they were overrun by spammers. And if you remember, if you were searching circa 2000, most search engines had become pretty useless at that point because the keyword-stuffed web pages were dominating search results. Now, Google, as I mentioned, changed the rules by adding inbound links to the search equation. And going forward, it's clear that customization and social sharing will play an increasingly important role in the links that search engines deliver. Search, for one thing, is going to get a lot more personal. We're actually seeing that today. For example, if you are signed into your Google account, and there are 500 million people who have Google accounts, or your Bing account, the search results that you get will reflect your past browsing behavior and even the contacts in your address book. In fact, Google now favors in its search results those links that are recommended by your friends, as well as content that's authored by your friends. You may see this if you search on a term and you see a little picture pop up of somebody you know on the first page of search results. That's intentional. That's an example of Google customizing those results based upon what it knows about you. If you use Google apps like Gmail and Google Docs, you get even more personalized results. Bing presents results from your Facebook network, and it recommends links that are shared by your friends there. So all search engines now have these elements of personalization built in, and this is just the beginning. Search engines are increasingly scouring the social web to look for content that's relevant to you based upon the social networks you participate in. The key to success in search is to spread your content across as many networks as possible. While the links from these networks may not always influence search results directly, for example because they're no-follow links, you're increasing your chance of being discovered by others and linked to by them. So while the search engine providers are mum about how important social links are to their results, it's clear from independent research, and I think all SEO experts agree on this, that recommendations on social networks are growing in importance. So success depends upon using multiple platforms and promoting through multiple social channels. These are just some of the factors in this list, and I won't go down the entire list, that we can expect to influence search results in the future. This list is by no means exhaustive. The point is that building a network of followers and connections creates awareness that has ancillary benefits in search. And the more that you can make your content in social networks public, the more it will benefit you. For example, in Facebook, by default, your posts are shared with your friends, but you also have the option of making your posts public. If there's no particular reason to share exclusively with your friends, it's a good idea to make posts public so that the search engines can see them and can index them. Much of what goes on in Facebook is invisible to the public web. So that's it for this introduction to search. Thank you for joining me. I hope this has been a useful introduction to the mechanics of this constantly changing field. Here's my contact information here, as well as a couple of the books, recent books I've written. If you'd like to reach me and discuss this topic or any topic relating to the evolution of the social web, I invite you to do so. This is Paul Gillen saying thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.